Hey guys, today I'll be doing the Philosopher's Tag. I was tagged from the Dusty Bookshelf, and this was originally done between Lines and Life. I'll link both of their videos down below. And let's get started. If I mispronounce any names, I do apologize. So let's begin. Question 1. Thales is considered the first known philosopher. Which text introduced you to philosophy, or which text would you like to read to get you into philosophy? I have been in philosophy for a little bit, kind of off and on. I have moments where I am into it and moments that I'm not. My first recalling of this was when I was about 12. And I was interested in world religions, and usually when you read about world religions, philosophy does get brought up. My first encounter of it was when I was reading about a book about Buddhism, which some people consider a philosophy, some people consider a religion. I won't go too much into it, but that kind of brought me into it, and also with Confucius as well. And ever since then, I've been reading about that and going from there. Let's see. The second question is, let me get to the screen a little bit better to read it. Karl Marx is a political philosopher turning the world upside down with the Communist Manifesto. Which political event or event in history would you like to read more about in fiction? I would say more Chinese history or the history of India. History of India as a whole, like any time period, because I'm not very familiar with it. I know very little about Mahatma Gandhi. Anything leading before that or after, I have really no idea about Indian history that much, so I would like to expand on that. And also Chinese history before the Communist Revolution there, because I don't know much about that either, and I do find Chinese history interesting, and I would like to expand my knowledge a little bit more on that. So, question number 3. Jean-Jacques Rousseau highly influenced the Enlightenment, a period which introduced critical thinking to the common people. Which book or author forced you to think more critically? I would have to say Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. I read it about, I want to say about 2013 or 2014 for the first time. I didn't read it in high school, or even after that. This was the first time I was reading it, was back then. And I've seen so many correlations between that book of the futuristic society to now, with people being obsessed with television, with disregard for literature, even some of the other things, with the main character's wife being addicted to prescription drugs. And she overdoses, and they just come in and clean her out, and like, oh, we'll just give her another prescription. Like, they're not even concerned. It's commonplace. I remember the medics who came and seen her said, oh, this happens all the time. We'll do it real quick, and then we'll leave. And they don't try to solve the issue, or she doesn't need to get help after it. And also just disregard for human thought, and more trying to make collective thought about what you see on your screens all the time. This one made me think about more of what society has becoming and where it's going. It truly made me think more. This was the book that really got me thinking more about society at large, and it's a very well put together novel. It made me question certain things. It made me think about what would happen if we became more of a totalitarian society. That's a tongue twister. And what would happen if they did start banning books, if they did only allow certain types of literature or certain types of thoughts and everything else was banned. Who would stand up? Who would try to save what we could of our history or of other people's histories? It made me think more about society than pretty much any other book up to that point has made me think about. And I do thank the author for allowing me to, or to help me to come to realize this. It's a very outstanding novel. I highly recommend it if you've never read Fahrenheit 451. Just put down any book you're reading, and read that as soon as possible if you have not read it. Alright, on to the next question. I do apologize in advance. I am kind of editing this in between questions to make sure I fully grasp the question, and also that I'm given a very thought out answer instead of just a blurt out. But my editing skills are kind of choppy at best, so I do apologize. Anyways, to question 4. Voltaire once said, "I do not agree with what you have to say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it." Which is a popular book everyone seems to love, but you didn't? Excuse me. This one wasn't. It was a popular book. It sold a lot of copies, but I wouldn't say everyone loved it. It was either people really loved it or really hate it. And I know this isn't much of a philosophy book or anything of that nature. And that was Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. I thought maybe the distaste from it came from, like, people who really didn't like romance, or I don't know. There was so many people who hated it for so many different reasons. So I thought I'd give it a try. I read the whole first book, and I read the whole second one. I couldn't make it to the third. I found the main character to be too weak, too submissive, she was very depressed over one person, but I didn't really feel like any type of relationship between them. It was just very two-dimensional. And I'm a fan of romance novels, especially like historical romances. And the women in those books seem more strong, more well thought out, more real than the characters in Twilight. And then, yes, I know it's a fantasy book. I'm not referring to that per se. I'm just saying, like, with their personality, it was just very flat. So that's one thing I couldn't. I tried, and I guess for once the public was, or the majority of the public, or people who did have distaste for this novel, was kind of right. Question 5. Hannah Arnett, doomed, controversial even by her friends. Hannah Arnett did not shy away from telling what she thought was true. Name a book that will leave readers uncomfortable but tells an important story. Actually, I think I have this book. Hold on a second. Give me just a second. All right. I would have to say John Fowler's The Collector. This book, I read it a while ago, and it basically deals with a guy who's obsessed with a girl. He never talked to her or anything of that nature. And one day he comes into money, I believe by winning the lottery there, or it takes place in England. And basically he kidnaps her and holds her hostage and basically tries to get her to love him. but the story goes between his point of view and her point of view. And the girl is an art student. She's very promising in the art society, very liberal, very, kind of part of the hippie movement at the time, or bohemian, maybe, to put it better. Very artsy. And why the male is more, who kidnaps her, is more, keeps to himself, is very, just kind of a very, very introverted, very just to himself, and that's basically it. But the way he talks is you tend to get sympathy for him, or how the writer writes it, and you have to keep in mind that he did kidnap someone, she doesn't love him, but he can't realize that. So I feel like this book really addresses mental disorder issues, especially with obsession and kind of what is love, and can you truly love someone but they're not in love with you, and is love just physical attraction, and can you ever force someone to love you like how he tried to do with her? It's a hard read. It has its moments, but it forces you to look at a reality that has happened, probably to someone out there, and I think it's very well written, and I highly recommend it if you haven't read it yet. Alright, so on to the next question. So, the sixth question. You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star. A wonderful quote from Nietzsche out of Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Which book do you go back to for its beautiful writing? This one's probably going to be a little bit surprising, I guess, to some people. But I would have to say William Golding's The Lord of the Flies. This is the only book I've read about 2 or 3 times. Usually I'm not a big rereader. I know if you do go back through a book, you can gain more understanding and everything else. But I just want to read as much as I can, and I don't tend to, good or bad, I don't tend to focus on books once I get done with them as much as I probably should, but I guess that's just my personality. But The Lord of the Flies, I feel, is a very different book. The way it's written, the way it describes how people interact with each other, their hunger for power, their communication with one another, how people act when things go awry, how people deal with stress, hunger, everything else. I feel like that book is very well written. And I would even dare to say I probably will read it again, not in the near future, but sometime later on, because I feel like it's such a well-written book, and I really did enjoy it every time I've read it, and it's something I could read every now and again and still find new meanings, find new ways to understand it, and I feel like it helps me to understand society yesterday, today, and probably tomorrow as well. So let's see. 7. Jean-Paul Sartre raised the question, what is literature, in one of his books. What is good literature for you? I guess it's kind of like beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I would have to say it would be on my current mood. Sometimes I'm more in the mood for like a lighthearted romance to where I can escape from reality. Sometimes I want a book to question my political or history belief, or how I feel about society at large, or religious beliefs, or anything of that nature. It varies, but anything basically, when I want something light, I just want something to tell me a story to take me away from all my problems, from all my issues that I'm having either with work, with life, what have you, and just make me forget for a little while and just to focus on something else. When I want something more real, something to question my beliefs a little bit more, just basically anything that makes me think. I do tend to read literature more geared towards my personal beliefs, though, and because once in a while I do try to read another book that I don't believe in at all, just to get a sense of it, and it's hard. Those books are harder to deal with, but I don't know. I don't even know how to respond to this question, because there's some people who can write a book within 30 days and not even really think about it, and it could be a bestseller. Some people could pour their heart and souls into a book, and you can't, and it's not very well recognized, but it's probably the best book you will ever read. I try to read the author's intentions on the book, and I feel like that's what gears me towards literature when it's taken into the serious format. As for the lighthearted one, just any story I would tend to enjoy. For the lighthearted stories I use to escape reality, I would say that would be the easier, just whatever I like at that time. Question number 8. Albert Camus, which book did you have to keep pushing through because you really wanted to understand its meaning? I wouldn't say quite pushing through, but I would have to say George Orwell's Animal Farm. I did have to do a little bit more research while reading the book compared to other books I've read, because I know there's a lot of symbolism in it, and I wanted to understand it to get the gist of it, what he was trying to say. And so that's the novel. Even though it was short, I spent a lot more time on it, or reading it and reading about it, than I probably have other books, because a lot of them are straightforward. And since this one has so much symbolism, I did tend to spend a little more time on it, even though it's not a very thick book. And the last question, question number 9. Which are the 3 philosophers you would love to sit down and have a chat with? Man, this one's a little bit of a hard one. Let's see. I would say Confucius for one, since he was one of the first philosophers I ever read about, and to see where he would think of where society's gone at large today, how he thinks of our political systems and everything of that nature. And I would say Friedrich Nietzsche, just to see where I know he was very anti-religious, and just to see what he thinks of religion now compared to how it was back when he was alive, and see where it's going to, what his thoughts and beliefs are on that. I feel like he would be a very interesting person to talk to. And also with Karl Marx as well, I feel like that would be very interesting, especially since Russia's, the downfall of communism back in 1990 with Russia, how certain societies do still claim communism, such as Cuba and China, but their economic system's very different than how he envisioned it, and see if he would have changed his beliefs, or if he would still hold firm to communism, or feel like something else would be best suited for it. So, that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. I do apologize again if I mispronounced any names. I do thank From the Dusty Bookshelves for the tag, and I hope you enjoyed the video. As for tagging, I don't know who to tag because sometimes people have done this video and sometimes they haven't. So if you would like to do the video, consider yourself tagged. If not, it's okay. You gotta do you, right? So I do thank you guys for watching. I do appreciate the views. If you want to subscribe, I appreciate it very much. If not, it's okay. And if you like the video, just give it a big thumbs up. And I hope to see you guys next time. Bye.